Hello and welcome to DevChatter, everyone. My name is Brendan Enrick, and today, as I mentioned on Twitter, we are going to be doing a little bit of an experiment. I have set up the skeleton of a project for creating a bot to run in the Twitch channel. So for this, what we are going to be doing today is essentially getting a basic start and doing a little bit of a hello world to this. I don't want to go too early right now, just because I want to give some people time to show up, because I didn't send out much announcement heads up for people, and I knew I was going to be starting late, which is why I didn't. Normally I would have started around 2 Eastern time today, but I'm a little bit delayed. Let's see. So the basic things that we want to do. So Twitch is set up essentially as an IRC service that we are able to talk to once we OAuth connect to it. So we're going to be figuring those out, I guess, how to do this in C# as we go forward. For now, we're going to be getting the basics set up with our project, because we are just starting this out new, and I plan on going through that with you guys. Just figuring some of these things. Don't know about you, but while I have contributed to a number of open source projects, and I am planning on having this open and public on GitHub, actually starting them from scratch and setting them up is not something I've done all that many times, at least ones where I expect people to potentially contribute. So I'm figuring the same is probably true for most of you guys. So let's go ahead and get started on this. So for those of you that aren't familiar, we are looking at Visual Studio 2017, and this is a .NET Core project that I set up. Should look a lot like a .NET project, but there are a couple of differences, which we'll probably see while we go into this. Just so you guys believe me, we really did get Hello World. I know you're surprised. So where we want to start, I am going to get us a test project, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this unit tests for now. Maybe we'll change that at some future date, but I think that's good enough for today. So that's going to go ahead and grab all of my required packages off NuGet and get us set up here. Let's see. Everything else should work. I'm going to go ahead and run a test just to confirm that they work. And while that's going, so the thing that we have to do in order to get this set up, so I mentioned that I wanted to get a bot going, and Twitch gives us some basics for how we can do this. So as I mentioned, Twitch is going to use IRC, which is a reasonable technology for doing chat applications. The other thing that we want to set up here is we're going to have to set up accounts, other things like that, which obviously I will do on my other monitor. However, we should be able to get most of this going on screen. All right, Twitch API, no, not the Twitch API. Let me go to the docs for chat and IRC. Twitch password generator, okay. Hang on a second while I read stuff, guys. Okay, so our first test is working. I am going to go ahead and set up another project in here for us. So the basic structure I'm going to go with is a pretty simple one. I don't want to have too much inside of that DevChatter.bot project. Right now I'm doing it as a console app, and I'll talk to you about what my thought process is here. So essentially what I'm planning on doing is that chatbot is, I should say the DevChatter.bot project is a console application that we're going to use to run the bot. The starting point that I'm planning on doing for it is I want it to be able to connect to Twitch and essentially just hello world, or maybe be a bot that can say a consistent message every, say, half an hour. So maybe we'll set up our first rule for the bot to be every 30 minutes it's going to type into chat and say, hey, don't forget to follow. And I think that will be a good starting point for the bot. Obviously down the road we're going to want to give a UI to this, and we'll be able to figure out what we want for that when we get there. So the main thing that I want to make sure that I do, so that we don't run into any problems at that point, is I'm going to go ahead and make the class library for the devchatter.bot to be a .NET Standard project. And the reason I'm going to do this is that a .NET Standard project can be referenced by either .NET Core or a .NET Framework. So if we decide that we want to use some technology for our bot that requires that we depend on the full version of the .NET Framework, we won't have to make any changes to the class library, and it should just work once we switch. My goal is to be able to do this using .NET Core, but we'll see how far down the road we're able to do that. The only limiting factor I can think of is just that some of the UI aspects might end up being a problem. However, it could be that we set up the bot as something that runs in, say, a web environment. So maybe the configuration of the bot all takes place on the web, and that's how you get it started running. We'll see what we end up doing with this. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and set up a class library for the bot. So I'm going to call this one, I guess we can do devchatter.bot.core. Okay. So the reason I set up this other project is just because I expect a number of things to end up in here. So obviously the path we're taking, this could end up being like, automated message or something like that, where we're going to end up with automated messages being created and stored somewhere. Today I'm expecting that's probably just going to be a parameter when you start the console application running. But who knows? I figure it's good to have the basic skeleton set up, and we can do well with that. So I am going to bring a Git window over onto the screen. Go ahead and add that project. I'm going to add the solution because we did change that. We're going to add the unit test project. So we're adding in a couple of projects. Let's see what it put in there. So there's our CS files. I think I don't want to check in this file because I am going to rename it. So I don't like unit test 1 as a test name. So I don't really have anything that I'm testing yet, so I might just get rid of it. So we're going to do that. So that project will be empty for now. And everything still builds. There's no test to run, so obviously don't have to run the test to confirm everything's still working. And let's go ahead and get this committed. Setting up the initial projects. Okay. Now we have the basic skeleton. So my plan at this point, I wanted to get that basic structure set up, along with if you'll take a look here, I have a get attributes, a get ignore, and a license file in here. I do still need to get a README file in here. I do not have one of those yet, but I will go ahead and just add one of those from the Git website, which I have pulled up on my other screen. And I'm going to put it directly on the master branch. Hey, the best way to learn, I'm going to assume that you mean C# there, but if you meant C, we could talk about that. The best way I can think of to learn C# is to start writing code on it. If you mean the basics, there are a number of tutorials that you can find all over the internet. There are videos for it as well as fairly good documentation. So if you go to the actual Microsoft documentation for it, just go to dot.net. So dot.net, like that. And once you're there, that is the Microsoft.net webpage. You can go ahead and click on Getting Started to get all the installers you need. And there are a lot of good tutorials for how to get started on C#. I don't know if it's still up there, but if you just want C, then pretty much the same stuff applies. There are videos, documentation all over the internet. I would say it really depends on what you want to learn. There are both books as well as online tutorials. If you're the kind of person that likes to sit around and read books, there are a lot of good books on C. And I would say just start writing stuff. So it's been quite a while since I've actually used pure C. Most of the time I use C++, but if you want to jump into that, be my guest. There are, again, tutorials everywhere. I don't have a specific one I'd recommend, but one reason why I would recommend a book is because most authors that write a book on a language will go ahead and get you a breadth of information for you to learn. Instead of just, here's a handful of things, they'll show you what you need to learn, like what the full set of information is. So that's the advantage of grabbing a book on it. Instead of just looking at tutorials on the internet, is knowing how much there is left to have a solid understanding. So that is the big thing there. Yep. There are also video sites all over the internet. Pluralsight has some good ones for all various languages, C, C++, C#. So whatever it is you want to learn. I am planning on doing all this in C#, so won't be doing any C for this, I hope, because I would like this to be slightly more approachable. C is not a language where a lot of people are just going to jump in and start doing it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pull in those changes and then get myself on my initial branch. So the first thing that I want to do is set up the concept of the automated messages that I want to do. So I want to go ahead and work that piece out because it is it's a simple piece of logic that we can start working on and have something in the bot, even if we're not yet connected to Twitch. That way, once we make our connection to Twitch, we can use that automated communication as our test for it. So I don't like, it can connect and do hello world as quite enough. So I want to have it connect and be able to, even if we set it up initially to say like once a minute, post in chat, hey, hope you're enjoying the stream, welcome and thanks. So that's where I want to start here. Hey, yeah, no problem. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully, we get you started on that. Oh, that's kind of fun. So your college actually wants you to learn C. So yeah, videos on the internet. You can easily find stuff on C, but the big thing I would recommend: pick a project and just start working on it. So, make little games, make little apps. Even if there's already one on the internet, you're not doing it because you're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna make the new whatever." You're just making the app to figure something out. So build something cool in C. It'll be fun. Make a simple game. So it's a nice way to learn. Okay, so we have that set up. Let's go ahead and so for now we write hello world. I don't want to stop there. I want to have an automated message. So what we're going to do is, first off, now that we're actually starting, I'm going to go ahead and say automated messages. So we're going to go ahead and set up automated messages. So in order to do this, I'm just going to set up a class with a basic set of properties for now. So I don't know how long I want to do for our delay, but I'm going to say delay in minutes for now, figuring we probably don't want to have any delays that are, in seconds in terms of an automated message, because I don't think we're going to want to have any automated messages going out more frequently than, say, once a minute. Some other automated systems might need to be more frequent than once a minute, but I have a feeling for messages, even 1 minute is going to be, well, quite overloading to the stream, we'll say. So we'll set that up. Let's see. So if we're going to make this a static message as our starting concept, let's just go ahead and say delay in minutes and the message as a string. So that is our automated message model object. So we can create one of these, and I'm kind of thinking, now shout out if you've got any ideas for how we should do this. We need to have some kind of collection. Since we're just in a console application right now, I'm thinking when we start, we can just load our automated messages into memory, or, and then potentially even just ask the user to type these in and create them at the beginning. Which down the road, obviously, we might give them an interface. They fill in a table full of, what automated messages at what intervals. But for now, I think it makes sense just to have a simple created one in the beginning. So I am big on just giving something a name and just changing it once we figure out what that name should be. So let's go ahead and start with just a cruddy name for this thing. Don't worry about what it is, we'll change it. So we have automated messages. The automated messages go into the automated messaging system, which I don't like. As I said, crappy name, because system doesn't really tell me what it does. I almost want to call it a scheduler, but I'm going to leave it alone for now and start typing, because I'll sit there all day trying to come up with a better name for it. So these are maybe queued messages, managed messages. Not sure what to call these for now. Either way, list of string queued messages. Okay, so what I'm thinking here is we have a collection of automated messages. And with those messages, we need to actually go through our interval, figure out essentially when to fire that message and get the next one going. So I'm thinking for now that we'll have a collection of queued messages, and we'll see whether we keep that or not. Let's go over and set up our unit tests for this. So I want to first create an automated messaging system. So let's see. So we have our automated messaging tests, and I want to say it almost is like an eventing system as the way we're creating this, but I also want to sort of have it delay and create these slowly over time. So we will say for now, I don't want to give access to that collection. I've got it as a public property, but I don't really want things to be added to it. So I kind of want to publish an automated message or something like that. So why don't we say publish should is going to be our class in here. And we're going to go ahead and put a using for xunit down here, and then say we're going to set up a fact to start with. It could end up being a theory eventually. If you're not familiar with xunit, it works a lot like NUnit. I'm probably going to mention that like 100 times when we use .NET Core, just because most people who use .NET or C# are more used to NUnit than xunit. It's pretty similar, except we're going to use just a method attribute here of a fact instead of, say, a test or a test method like you'd get in NUnit and MS test. And then we also don't need to have a class attribute on our class for the test class or the test fixture. So for this initial thing, I want to get a new automated messaging system. And I could add the reference like this, or I could go over to dependencies, add reference, and find it that way. I'm just using a software tool that can make the reference to core like that. So we're going to set up our messaging system. And it could, so I've called it automated messaging system right now, which I'm almost thinking now maybe should be like time interval messaging. But I also don't like the fact that this is, so the automated messaging system actually now is starting to sound better to me, because all automated messaging can go through here, whether it's interval based or whether it's in response to something. So, have to think about that. We're wanting to have a publish method and have that take in an automated message. And delay in minutes is going to be 1, and the message is going to be welcome. If you are enjoying content, please follow DevChatter for more. Okay, so now we have a simple test setup. We're going to take our action of calling publish. It's going to throw a not implemented exception. And once we've got that, we want to assert that this actually did the task that we requested it do. So in order to get this to happen, I'm going to go ahead and say assert dot maybe a contains on it. So we're going to say contains, say messaging system dot managed messages So we want to have that in there, and we are expecting that collection to contain our automated message, right? That's the expected one. This is the collection. Expecting that to be in the collection. Okay. So that obviously will not be in the collection because publish doesn't do anything. And actually, I'm not sure if that keyboard shortcut I just did is going to work or not. Hey, looks like it did. Cool. All right, so obviously, publish should. Test 1 is going to throw an exception. The first thing I'm going to do to fix that is come in here and give this thing a name. So we are expecting our publish method is going to add automated message to managed messages. So our test doesn't really tell us much right now, but it's better than nothing, and it's a start. So let's go back to the messaging system. Let's go ahead and have it actually add that. Manage message, and then we're going to say add the automated message. Okay, so I mentioned that I was thinking an automated message might be an interval message, so I think I'm going to go down that route. So I'm going to change this from a, well, actually, I'm going to just rename this one for now. We'll extract out the interface in a little bit, but I'm feeling like we need an interface for this instead of this one. And the reason why is that I think there should be automated messaging interface, but also an interval message, or like a repeating interval message. Essentially a message triggered by time. Either way, let's go ahead and get this passing. I think it is now. Oh, it's not. Did I not actually complete what I was doing? Manage messages, add. Okay. I didn't look too carefully at my code. Let's see what it's doing. Null ref, because I didn't do this. So for those of you that don't know, you can now initialize in C# directly on a property like this. So you don't actually have to put those in the constructor or anything like that, or do one of the lazy initialization getters that were pretty common in C# before. We can now just go ahead and say, yep, go ahead and initialize the backing field of my property with one of these, and it'll wire it up nicely. So if you haven't touched C# in a while, we've got nice little things like that are built in today, as well as a lot of other very cool things. So this is working, so I'm going to go ahead and commit this. Let's take a look. Okay, automated message, and the messaging system, and then that should be still has these changes, I wonder. The project changed. That makes sense. Oh, right, because it was a whole folder of tests. That's why. Because I put it in the folder. DevChatter bot core, unit tests. Yep, that's what I expected. And for this, we're going to go ahead and say And yeah, I'm just mentioning the class as the tests should be self-explanatory that they're coming in with this. So as I said, I'm not big on this being here. So I want to get to the point where it's interval based. So I think I'm just going to change this to interval based. I don't want to use base just because it's interval triggered message. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a rename on that and get those changed. So the next thing I want to do, so we have an interval triggered message. I'm thinking we need to actually create that interface, but I'm going to go ahead and finish this rename real fast. Triggered message and publish should. What's the last change? Why won't you give me that one? Really? Oh, because I'm typing add. That's why. I think if I were typing stage, it might have given it to me, but either way. That's what I get. Light on sleep. So renaming. So it did get that was a rename, didn't it? Yeah. Let's see. Renaming the automated message. Okay, so we're now an interval triggered message, which I like a little better. However, this doesn't make sense anymore. So I want to take in an interface, and I'm going to call this an automated message. So let's see. So for this message, I kind of feel like we almost like I'm just debating for how we want this to work. I think we want to call this thing. We want to be able to call these messages and ask them, "Are you ready to?" Essentially, is it time for you to be a message? Essentially, like an, is it your time to display? Almost want to do one of these, and just sort of ask it, giving it some basic system state, and be like, "Hey, are you ready to run?" The reason why is I kind of feel like that handles most situations, essentially just asking the message, because then our automated system can deal with automated messages, and it doesn't care whether it's an interval-based message or whether it's triggered based on response to someone, say, mentioning something. So let's go ahead and do this for now. So, is it your time to display? And I'll figure out what needs to be on here. So the interval message feels like this needs to take in some kind of a... So we mentioned it would take some kind of state object. I'm thinking that we can test this class to see if it can tell when it's ready, given that state that we were talking about. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Whoops, actually I just realized I put this on the wrong thing. That's, told you, lack of sleep. Okay, so interval triggered message. I automated message. Okay. So I want to do an interval triggered message test, and inside of here I want to say, is it your time to display? Again, I don't like the name, but renaming is easy. We can come back and fix it at some future date. So this is a fact, and for our fact, we're going to say public void return true. I'm going to say return false at initial creation. So I'm thinking, if you're doing an automated message, you're doing an interval-based message, and you set it to a frequency of running every 5 minutes, I'm thinking right when it's created and the system's running, so the initial setup should be that it does not run. And then 5 minutes after is when it does its first run. So return false at initial creation. Okay. So I'm going to create a new interval triggered message. And we're going to go ahead and say, so we don't care about what the delay is. We're going to say 1 minute. And our message is going to be, you know, hello there. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's go ahead and assert.isFalse, false, interval. Is it your time to display? Okay, so for now, I didn't pass it any parameters. I didn't tell it what time it is or anything like that. I'm just expecting that the first time it's going to come back with a false. Easiest thing to do, return false. So we're going to go ahead and do that. See what it comes back with. Success. We returned false. Good job. Okay. So now that we can do that, I'd say the next thing, next obvious thing, is to go ahead and be able to make it say true sometime. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and say return true. Given time equal to delay in minutes. So this thing needs to take in some kind of state, but for now, I am just going to pass in the date. We'll change this out for a state object later. I'm going to go ahead and say now. Which I know it's not perfect. So adding that date parameter, what? Seriously gonna take that long to add it? Oh, right, because I have to add it here also. Shouldn't be doing anything with it. I'm just going to run and make sure nothing broke. Nope, because it didn't add it here. This is going to be date time, current time. Okay. And yes, I'm aware that it's not the current time, but as far as that code is concerned, it's supposed to be getting called with the current time so it can determine if it needs to be run or not. So, true. And then we're going to go ahead and fix this one because it's broken. So we're going to go ahead and say so in some way we have to tell this thing, hey, you're in the system now, so turn yourself on. I almost want to initialize it. That could be the creation of it that does this. So it could be at startup. And yeah, I know we're not getting too much Twitch just yet. But as I said, I wanted to be able to at least do automated messages first. So let's go ahead, jump over here. I'm going to add an initialize method. That just starts it with a basic state. So I'm going to give it the current time there too. I'm thinking for these that we're going to want to give it the current state of things just on a regular basis and just be like, hey, here's the current conditions. You tell me what you want to do. Because this could even be things like, who's in the chat or what. We could base it on all kinds of things. So let's go ahead and update with that. Oh, I forgot I was going to adjust these. I don't want these to be public. I'll need a constructor for that if I'm going to do it then. Oh, hey, that's fun. So Jeff is apparently planning on doing a bot for Twitch and Mixer at some point. I actually didn't know he was planning on doing that. Either way, might work with him on his at some point. Or maybe he'll jump into this one. Either way, or we can have two. It doesn't really matter. It's all just figuring stuff out anyway. So for now, I think I'm just going to go ahead and record this time. That's not the name of it. It's going to be, for now, just previous runtime. And I would do lowercase time, but I kind of think runtime as one word is like a runtime, not the previous time it was run. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and say if previous runtime is what, greater than current time. No, current runtime dot add minutes of delay in minutes. If it's greater than that, return false. Else return true. Might have that backwards, I can't remember. Either way, I'm not going to bother checking that carefully because I can just go ahead and run this. Okay. Failed on initial creation. we expected to get back false. We actually got back true. I am not going to bother doing anything else other than just taking a look. So, what we are going to do is jump into this code. We're going to take a look at what those values are. So, previous runtime, I didn't call initialize. That's why. We're going to call initialize with datetime.now. And yes, I'm aware that those datetime.nows are not the same because some time will pass between those, so there's no guarantee that those will be identical, but they don't need to be because we're working in terms of minutes, so I'm not too worried about it. If you're worried about it, let me know. Okay, so problem solved. So our initialization, the previous time it did not work right, I think because it was always returning back true because the initial time was coming in as a date time empty value, so all zeros. And clearly it had been more than a minute since all zeros. Okay, so those work all right. Let's go ahead and make it actually work on some kind of an interval. So when we call initialize, we set that time. We could just say update previous runtime. Instead of calling it initialize. We'll figure it out in a second. So looking over here, we have published messages, and then interval triggered messages, so we added in there. So this is a managed message. So I think this is the piece that needs to be running every minute or so and checking to see, hey, do I have any messages to send out? I mean, obviously it should be checking far more often than once a minute. So we'll take a look at that one in a second, though. So interval triggered message, so we return back false in that. Okay. Making sure everything runs, then I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes. So the annoying thing here is that I actually have to get the status before it'll auto-complete the files for me. And that should be the set of tests. And for CS files, right, and it's a .NET Core project, so there's not going to be a CS proj file. For those of you that don't know, I do just want to mention this. The nice thing about these new files is even though they are still a CS proj file and XML, they don't list all the files in here, which is really useful if you're working on a team, because you no longer run into merge conflict just because two people added two separate class files to the same project, because we don't even list them in here. It's now based on files being in the folder, so a little bit nicer that way. Okay, And yes, we are just running .NET Standard 2.0 on these, which I know is a little behind the times, but I see this as being a little bit better because more people support it. Okay, so I was committing this. Creating automated message interface. So we were really pulling that interface out because we want it to be what's used instead of our automated message, our interval triggered message, I should say. So this should be a automated message. This is actually a list of automated messages now. Those are still just going to be the queued message itself. So I'm thinking that the an automated message is going to have a get the message to send kind of method on it, which is going to actually get back the string. So what that means is that if you're using a variable in there, we're going to create an instance of it, and then that created instance is going to go in here. And once it's in the queue, then we can use that as basically the way that we send it out to IRC. Maybe we won't keep the queue very long, but I like it, at least for now, for our testing, because that means I don't have to watch for events to have been fired into some other collection or some other object. It's a little simpler at this point, just to get this working. Let's go ahead and rename this and call this automated message. Managed messages, managed. Yeah, we'll say managed automated messages. Okay. Let's go ahead, take a look at the status again. Go ahead and add that one and add that one. So we modified both of these two. Okay. Let's go ahead and run these again, see what we get. Just make sure everything's good before we do that commit. All right, so those tests at least are passing. So let's go ahead and push this one out. And by push it out, I mean don't push it anywhere, just go ahead and commit it. Changing system to use interface. Okay. So now we have the system uses these new messages. I think the next thing we want to put in here, so I mentioned that we wanted to have a get message instance. And again, I'm just going to do the date time again. As I said, eventually that's going to be a state object. It tells us the current conditions, especially say of the triggering event. So I think there'll be some event details on it or something like that, some kind of event object. So in the case of a message that's triggered in response to someone typing something, for example, we'll be specifying who it was that typed it and what they said, so we can respond based on that. So for this one, though, we really just care about the time, and that's a reasonable spot to start. So let's go ahead and implement this. So we are going to return message And before we return message, we are going to set our previous runtime. So now that we do that, what we're going to end up with is this code should be able to now wait another minute and get the message again. So what we're going to do in order to test this is jump over to our interval triggered message. Is it your time to display? Should. And what we're going to say here is return false immediately after sending message. Okay, so we're going to initialize at datetime.now. What I am then going to do is I am going to say interval triggered message get message instance at datetime.now. And actually, I am going to add minutes -1 to this one. Now this is returning a string, but I'm going to ignore it because I don't really care. Alright, so now we're going to say is it your time to display, and we're going to say datetime.now. And yes, again, I'm aware that those are not the same datetime.now. I'm just going to call that result, and you know what? It's only 4 letters. We're not going to var that thing. So I'm expecting this to be false for my result. So we're going to say return false immediately after sending a message. Okay. So here's the way we're going to check and see whether or not. So here's the actual test. So we need to make sure it can fail, because that's the only way to determine that a test really can fail, is to let it fail sometimes. So we're going to remove the point where we update the time. Okay, there we go. So in this case, we did our initialization at -1 minute, so it would have been, so it'll now be true at datetime now. But what that means is that our call to actually get the instance, where it does this step here and sets the current time, is required in order for that to know that it shouldn't be running again. And then just to confirm that we're not shutting it off, should return true on second interval. So we're going to go ahead and add minutes 1, and we are now expecting this to be true. Now in theory, I could get that date time now that I'm using, I could really use any date time I wanted. I don't really need to use date time now. In fact, why don't I just yank out a constant from here? I'm going to pull out all constants of this and just use current time as a read-only field inside of my test. So now that's an unchanging time. So the only variances that are going to matter are just the points where I add minutes to it. So all of our testing is going to take place at whatever time we started this. I could also hard code in that time. I don't have to use datetime.now as the actual current time for our tests, obviously. Okay. So let's see what we can't get committed here. That's not a bad set. So the interface and the interval and our tests. So here, what we were changing is we added the concept of getting message instance. We are adding get message instance concept. Okay. Not bad, not bad. Not liking everything on here right at this moment, but I don't hate it either, so no complaints at the moment. So, automated messaging system. Thinking we want to do some kind of delayed system here. I almost want this thing to be multi-threaded, but I almost sort of don't. Just because I'm expecting it to get nasty once we start doing that. But it does need to be monitoring things as we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do for now, instead of actually setting this up with our loop, is instead of actually having that interval, I'm going to have the automated messaging system have a method that I can just run here. Check state, check for check for messages, check for I'm just gonna say check messages for now. That's not, I think I get what it's doing. And again, I'm just gonna use time for this. So in our automated messaging system tests, we are gonna say class check messages should. And we're going to say that this is a fact with public void add messages, add no messages to queue given no automated messages. Okay, so the initial test that I want to do is the simple one of we don't have any automated messages in the system, so we're just going to make sure that it indeed queues nothing when we do this. So we're going to go ahead and say new automated messaging system. Oh, thanks for not adding those parens in there for me. How did you know I didn't want them? So we're not going to publish any. We're just going to say check messages, datetime.now, assert assert collection. Really? Assert empty. There we go. Automated messaging system queued messages. Okay. So we want to assert that this thing's empty. I think that's just gonna work. Okay, it does. So that's a simple one. The next thing I want to do is call publish. We're going to publish a new automated message in here. I kind of feel like I want to get a fakes. Always ready message. Automated message. Okay. We won't do anything. This guy just returns true. And this message is just an empty string, or maybe always ready. Okay. So we're going to have always ready and never ready. This one. And just to be sure, I'm going to put the not implemented exception back in here. Can not implemented exception ever take a message? Yes, it can. How did you do this? Okay, so we're never, like, the concept here is that we never call the get message instance if it's not the time to display, so this one should never be able to get here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and move this to its own file. So, there we go. Now I might replace those with mocks or something else at some point, but that worked fine for that. So, add one message to queue given one ready automated message. Okay. For now, I'm just going to say not empty, because that will pass the initial test. So new always ready message. So we're going to publish an always ready message into this, and then it should not be empty anymore. Which of course we're expecting to fail, because we didn't actually do anything to wire up that message, but it at least lets us confirm that we're there. So check message. We called check message, which gives us the chance to see which messages we have that are ready. So first thing I want to do is say managed messages where is it your time? Give it the current time. And then we're going to go ahead and say, since we have each one of these, we're going to select from them. So from just the ones that are ready, we're going to select the message given the current time, which again is really just meaning getting the state. messages to queue. That's what we're going to put in here. This name's too long. Managed messages. Okay. Now we're going to say messages to queue. We're going to say queued messages. Add range messages to queue. Really? Why you give me that squiggly? It's fine. It's fine. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. Okay, cool. So looks like it passes. And yeah, I could have done that a simpler way, but that seemed easy enough. Add add correct messages to queue. Let's go with add the 1, given many messages, only 1 ready. So never ready message and a never ready message. Okay, I'm going to change that to assert that there was a single one in there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to assert that there's a single one. So I added a bunch of messages to that collection, but I only want 1 actual instance of a message to send to get queued. And it looks like it works. So, in order to confirm that, what I could do, just to make sure, is come back here. Instead of actually checking, because the previous one would pass if it just said true, to be honest. I didn't actually need that where on the previous one because I didn't send in any messages that were not ready. So this should only be failing the most recent test, which it looks like it is because it's saying only 1 failed test. Now when I look at these, how did you do this? Okay, so it looks like I blew up based on the fact that it tried to grab the message for one of the ones that's never ready. And I'm okay with that. That is a good way to make sure that fails, because it really should fail. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back. We're going to go ahead and run these tests again. Alright, cool. So that's the piece we're going to automate there. Yep. And then last is that folder. So we end up with, we modified the messaging system adding in the check message. So we are git commit -m adding check messages method to called periodically. Okay, so that is the piece that's actually going to get called on a regular basis. Okay. So now that we've got that set up, I am going to So in this, what did we do? We called this, we queued up the messages. So I'm trying to think how we want to pull these out of here. So we have this new list. I want to be a little cautious. So the way we've got this set up right now, everybody else can see that these messages are in here, and I did this because I wanted to be able to test it, but I'm not big on exactly how we've got this structured. I don't really like that that anybody can just access this collection, do whatever they want with it, and by anybody I mean like any other code outside of this class. So we might want to clean that up at some point. Then we also have the same problem with queued messages. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. To do lockdown access to this. So the queued messages, though, I definitely want to be able to pop messages off of here one at a time and have them actually be removed. Pop messages off of the queue. So my thought is this: from the program.cs, like today, which means like I don't expect it to run this way for very long at all. I kind of want to just, set up a loop that's doing a thread.sleep or something like that. It's just like a simple way. I don't want to call it a test, more like an automated confirmation, because we have automated tests, but just a way that we could see it working. So I almost want to do like a thread.sleep at like 100 millisecond intervals or something like that. So, and then just say 10 times a second, check to see, hey, anything to report, or we could even do it once a second and just say, hey, check for messages every second. So our bot won't be like super responsive because, again, humans can tell if there's a delay of a second in something they do, but I also think it works pretty well for an initial setup here. So, let's go ahead and create one of these automated messaging systems. Automated messaging system. And guess what? I can reference that there too. So automated messaging system, and we're going to go ahead and say publish new interval triggered message. We're going to say it is a 1 minute delay. Hello everyone, I am the bot. That's the message. So we have an interval triggered message that is automated. It's going to publish. Now I'm expecting this code that I'm putting in here in this while loop to actually end up inside the automated messaging system at some point. But I'm not expecting it to look like this, so on publish, did I initialize when I call publish? I can't remember if I did or not. No, I didn't. I guess I'm going to use datetime.now for now, which I'm not a big fan of, but hey, why not? Okay, so looking at this, what we've got, this should check for messages. That's like check for new messages almost. Alright, I'm going to leave it as check for messages for now. And then after we run, I almost want to like for each over that set, and then yeah, you know what, I'm going to pop them off. I'm thinking that we want to do a thinking we want to do something where we pop items off the collection and keep going through it. Almost feels like, and not a big fan of it, but an output variable type solution. So if we dequeue a message, then we can end up with a, oh man, my brain is blanking. It's an out string message. Just trying to remember which order that went in. So if queued messages equal what? Right. Any, that's what I was going for. Okay. So if there aren't any of these, we're going to go ahead and just return false. Return true. Message equals default string. Then what do we want to put in here? We want to say queued messages. You know what? I'm going to build this one with a test. Automated messaging tests. I'm going to go ahead and say dequeue message should. Return false given empty queue. Okay, so new automated messaging system. Whoops. Going to attempt to dequeue a message. We're going to say outstring my message. Cool. Let's see. Result. Assert false. Result. Okay. This, I think, is just going to pass because there aren't any in there, which I usually like my test to fail to begin with, but let's go ahead and do this. You think it's going to pass, though? Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it should pass. If it didn't pass, then I was going to be like, I don't understand what's going on here. Something wouldn't be working right if that passed. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is what happens if I do publish something in here. Automated messaging system, publish. A new always ready message. And then we're going to check messages, giving it datetime.now. So the now should be a message in the queue, and we should be able to run that. Hey, welcome. Thanks for following, Spaze. Okay, so there should now be a message in the queue, which means we're expecting this to be true. And then additionally, we expect that message to be in there. So assert equals, the expected value is going to be my always ready message. I'm going to get that as a variable just because. So I'm going to say message, ooh, I can't get the message that way. Without, well, I guess I can, doesn't matter. That's not the worst thing. Okay, so we are expecting that it pulled out the message. So return true and provide message given single queued message. Now I don't like all the steps we had to take there for that one, but alternately we could just add an item to the queue manually, but I don't like that either because I don't want to have to get rid of it later. So okay. We expected always ready, but we got back null. So what that means, if I take a look at this, is that we didn't actually grab the message, which means we returned true, so we got down here to this, but we left our default in there, which is exactly what should have happened. So message, we want to assign equal to queued message dot first We don't need to put a predicate on that. Actually, is there a guy can dream. So, but then we want to remove it. Right? We should. Now I don't have a test for that, so I'm actually not going to remove it yet. I'm going to make sure I do that right and actually get a test that requires that I remove that. I was just going to do it, and then I realized, you know what? I really want to have a test that makes sure we really do remove it, because otherwise we're going to keep repeating the same messages. So the one thing I'm not worried about right now is a multi-threaded scenario where I have more than one instance of this, so I'm not going to deal with locking that collection or doing anything like that. We're just going to take a simple approach to this bot for now. So did I actually, yeah. Okay. I want to say return only one message given single, whoops, I said queues, I meant queued. Queued. Okay, so return only one given that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and call that twice. Throwaway message. That's what we're going to call it. Actually, that one's going to be my message. And then we're going to assert that throwaway message is null. So that should be false. So we're priming the queue with a single message, with a single automated message, and then the instance that it creates from that automated message is there should only be one. So that should work. I mean, it's going to fail, but I mean the test should work for confirming it. So we got back a true, which means it still found one the second execution. So that means that we haven't removed the message. So we're going to say queued messages, remove at index 0. Now, I know it's not perfect, but I think that gets us what we want. We're about to find out. Hey, okay, cool. So what that means is that inside of here, we can now say, well, automated messaging system.dequeue message. We're going to say out string the message, console write line. Now I'm going to do a nice string interpolation here, and I'm going to datetime.now.to short time string, and then I'm going to say the message. Okay, so I definitely primed in one of these, and then I check for messages. So now once a minute, it should work. I think. We're about to find out by putting ourselves in an infinite loop. Maybe I should have had an initial hello. So while this is sitting here, we can talk about some of the stuff that we want to do with this. So the couple of things I'm thinking is we want some kind of command system so you can directly talk to the bot. Most bots I know of in Twitch start all their commands with an exclamation point, and then you give some kind of command to it, and that works pretty well. We could also have it respond to specific phrases. So it could just talk to you based on certain things. So like someone uses a certain Twitch emote and it responds back in kind. It could post things based on events. Hey, there we go. We got one. So there's our first message. Wow, right at 4 o'clock. That was nicely timed. I can't believe I got it on that minute. Okay, so now we want to wait one more minute, see if we can't get the next one. So I've used the chatbot that I used to use for Twitch is called Ankbot, like ANKH bot. That was not too long ago acquired by Streamlabs, and Streamlabs rebranded it as the Streamlabs chatbot, and it works pretty well. So I don't intend this to replace it, but you know, this could be a fun bot to run in addition to that one, for example. So we are now in that minute, so any second now. Hey, there it is. Cool. All right, so our automated system sort of works. It's the simple version right now, but we have confirmed that that seems to do what we think it's going to do. So sorry about that. Just had to sneeze there. Luckily, I muted you. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a message so that we know that that is going. So I did a while true with a thread sleep of a minute. I should say to exit, press Control C. Oh, it's kind of sad that that's the only way to get out, but alright, so here's what it loads. Initializing the bot to exit, press Control C. Okay. So for now, that's the only way to do that, and I'm not too worried about dealing with anything other than Windows for today. Obviously, we'll add some more later so that it can run other places. But let's go ahead and get some of this stuff committed. Okay, so the main thing we were adding here is the dequeuing. So actually, where's program? I'm going to leave that one out for now. I'm going to commit that separately. Nothing in there should be depending on anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and say add dequeuing to automated system. Now I'm going to add the program change. Adding simple running of the bot. So we're going to call that so bot, not bit. Okay, so that works reasonably well. We have a bot that can once every minute spit this out, and I don't mind the structure, and we've got some reasonable tests. Now, you might be asking, hey, why are you doing this, so deliberately? And the reason why is I consider this to be like practice fun time. And obviously, when I'm hit with a deadline, I'm going to write tests for a lot of things that I think matter. And usually I use pair programming to get beyond some of the things like coming up with a name. So while one person's focusing on the details of typing, the other person can be focused on, the overall picture, thought about, how we should structure things. Additionally, you guys would be surprised how much it slows you down to talk to an audience and not just a single person sitting next to you. So anyway, next time we're going to take this and we are going to point this bot at Twitch and set up the OAuth connection. My intention there is that we can get connected to its IRC and swap out that console write line for an abstraction that could either send out to the IRC of Twitch or potentially send here to our console window, or who knows, maybe talk to Discord. So could be Slack, doesn't really matter, but in some way set up some kind of automation so we can send messages. It is also possible that we could configure these messages so that certain automated messages are for certain places. For example, sending out to Slack, you might not want it to talk once a minute, for example, and say hello. You might want to delay that a little bit because Slack's a different type of messaging system, whereas on Twitch it's fairly active and engaged time. On Slack it's more disconnected, so you want messages to be a little more spread out. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this bit of DevChatter. I think we're going to call it quits here. We had a couple of good hours here, not quite 2. Don't forget to hit the follow button if you didn't, and you'll get notified when we do our next stream. Yeah, thank you for coding with us, and we'll probably work some more on this later, and also jump back to katas and programming exercises. I am reaching out to people right now to see who else we can get to hop in here, do some pair programming. I would like to do some katas with people, so if you're interested, go ahead and shout out to me, let me know. And either way, thank you all for stopping by, and have a great day.